When Lachlan put up the life-sized bronze statue of a grieving angel in the family plot at Iron Raven Cemetery, he had no inkling of the dark whispers it would stir. By day, the statue, with its shrouded head and outstretched wings, stood frozen in an eternal moment of sorrow. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, the angel transformed, its presence imbued with a sinister, almost malevolent energy. The shroud over its head concealed a face that seemed to shift and writhe in the shadows, giving the eerie impression that the angel could reach out and seize the unwary. Rumors soon spread like wildfire through the town and countryside. They whispered of a haunting, a spirit trapped within the statue. Black Aggie, they called her. It was said she was the tormented soul of a mistreated wife buried beneath the angel's feet. At midnight, her eyes would blaze a hellish red, and those foolish enough to meet her gaze would be struck blind. Pregnant women who wandered too close would miscarry, and anyone daring enough to sit on her lap would be crushed in her cold, bronze embrace. If one were to stand before a dark mirror and chant her name thrice at midnight, Black Aggie would appear and drag the unfortunate soul down to the netherworld. The dead, they said, would rise from their graves to commune with her on moonless nights. Curiosity and dread drew people to the cemetery, eager to witness the eerie monument. Among them, a local fraternity saw an opportunity for a chilling initiation rite. Black Aggie sittings became a macabre tradition, where new members had to spend a night beneath the statue with their backs to the grave of General Lachlan. One particularly dark night, 2 fraternity members escorted a nervous candidate to the cemetery. The moon hid behind a thick blanket of clouds, and an oppressive silence hung in the air. As the initiate took his place beneath the statue, the atmosphere grew heavy with a palpable sense of malice. Shadows seemed to converge around him, twisting and coiling like spectral serpents. What began as a prank took on a deadly seriousness. The fraternity brothers, standing a few paces away, felt a chill of fear as the shadows thickened. One stepped forward, intending to call out, but stopped short as the statue moved. The shrouded head turned slowly, revealing a pair of glowing red eyes beneath the hood. The angel's arms, once still and lifeless, now reached out with deliberate intent. The fraternity brothers stood frozen in horror as the initiate's scream pierced the night. The statue's embrace was swift and merciless, drawing the boy into its cold, unyielding grasp. His cries were cut short, replaced by a haunting silence. The angel's eyes, burning with a malevolent light, seemed to rest thoughtfully on the remaining boys who fled in blind terror. A night watchman, alerted by the commotion, arrived at the Lachlan plot to find the lifeless body of the initiate at the foot of the statue. His face was twisted in a rictus of unimaginable fear, as if he had glimpsed the very essence of darkness. The disturbances caused by Black Aggie grew so severe that the Lachlan family decided to donate the statue to the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. There, the grieving angel was consigned to storage, its malevolent presence confined never again to haunt the living or the dead of Iron Raven Cemetery. Or so they hoped. The blizzard raged like an ancient beast, its icy breath howling through the desolate landscape. 2 brothers, their forms hunched against the biting wind, trudged down the endless, snow-covered road. They were miles from the nearest farmstead, and the cold gnawed at their bones. Salvation came in the form of a dimly lit tavern, its warm glow a beacon in the white abyss. Pushing through the door, they were greeted by the gaze of every patron. The older brother, Elias, ordered coffee with their last coin, while his younger sibling, Finn, clung to him for warmth. The bartender, a grizzled man with a kind face, went to fetch their drinks. Most of the regulars returned to their hushed conversations, but one man continued to stare. a hulking butcher with a wild mop of red hair and a long, unkempt beard, his breath reeking of alcohol.
"You're looking at me funny,"
the butcher slurred, staggering toward the boys.
"We weren't looking at you,"
Elias replied calmly.
"We're just trying to warm ourselves by the fire."
"Are you calling me a liar?"
the butcher bellowed. The room fell silent, eager for the spectacle of a fight.
"We didn't say that,"
Elias said quickly, raising his hands in a placating gesture, accidentally brushing the butcher's arm. That was all it took. With a roar, the butcher grabbed Elias by the collar and hurled him into the roaring hearth. The tavern held its breath as Elias's scream pierced the air, the flames consuming him. Finn cried out in terror, rushing to his brother's side, desperately trying to smother the fire with his small hands. The butcher watched with a twisted grin as Elias's screams faded into silence, his body collapsing in a charred heap.
"Your turn,"
the butcher growled, reaching for Finn, but the younger boy, propelled by sheer terror, fled into the blizzard. His small, frozen body wouldn't be found until the thaw of spring. A decade passed, and the legend of the ghostly brothers became a whispered tale among the locals. One evening, the butcher, now older and more weathered but no less cruel, found himself walking the same road the brothers had once taken. He scoffed at the ghost stories, dismissing them as tavern talk and old wives' tales. As he walked, an eerie silence descended, muffling the crunch of snow beneath his boots. In the unnatural quiet, he heard the footsteps of a large animal, mirroring his own. Heart pounding, he turned and beheld a monstrous black dog, its eyes blazing a cold, unnatural blue. Those eyes, he had seen them before, staring at him from the face of a young boy consumed by flames. The dog growled, a low, menacing sound, and took a step forward. The butcher turned to flee, only to find himself face to face with a tall, flaming figure. The burning boy, Elias, reached out with charred, skeletal hands. The butcher's scream echoed through the night as blood gushed from his eyes and nose, his body collapsing lifelessly into the snow. To this day, travelers in Ember Hollow speak of the black dog and the flaming boy, their spectral forms haunting the path, avenging the innocent, and speeding wayfarers on their journey. The tale of the vengeful spirit serves as a chilling reminder of the horrors that lurk in the shadowed corners of the world. In the heart of a sprawling, shadow-draped city, where secrets thrived in the narrow alleyways and the night whispered tales of old, a man named Percival lived in solitude. He was an unremarkable figure, blending seamlessly into the backdrop of urban anonymity, until the day he noticed the new neighbor. She was a pretty, middle-aged widow, her presence marked by an air of quiet mystery. With her dark, curling hair and sparkling eyes, she exuded an enigmatic charm. Always she wore dark gloves, even indoors. Percival found himself irresistibly drawn to her, concocting excuses to meet. Their paths accidentally crossed often, leading to long conversations on the cobbled streets. One afternoon, as she pushed a stray lock of hair from her forehead, he caught a glint of something golden beneath the glove on her right hand. Intrigued, he asked her about it. She smiled coyly, revealing that she had lost a hand years ago and now wore a hand of solid gold. A wicked desire ignited within Percival, not for the widow herself, but for the golden hand she concealed beneath her glove. He embarked on a calculated courtship, showering her with flowers, theatre tickets, and lavish gifts, his every word dipped in honey. Within a month they were wed, exchanging vows of eternal love before a minister. Within another month, Percival stood over her grave, a grieving widower. His wife had succumbed to a mysterious illness, a slow poison that mimicked a wasting disease. No one suspected foul play. That night, he slipped the golden hand beneath his pillow, a trophy of his dark triumph. The night was heavy with foreboding. Clouds obscured the moon, and the wind howled through the streets, rattling the shutters of his townhouse. Percival drifted into a deep sleep, his dreams twisted with greed and guilt. Suddenly the door to his room burst open with a deafening bang. A wild wind tore through the space, flinging papers and clothes into disarray. He bolted upright, his heart pounding. A greenish-white light floated into the room, growing in intensity until it took the shape of his deceased wife. She was missing her right arm.
"Where is my golden hand?"
She moaned, her eyes blazing with unholy fire.
"Give me my golden hand."
Percival's mouth moved, but fear choked his voice into silence. The ghost drifted closer, her once beautiful face now a grotesque mask of rage and sorrow.
"You stole my life and my hand. Give it back."
She howled, the sound rising to a terrible crescendo as the green light flared, blinding him. He cowered against his pillows, feeling the hard, cold shape of the golden hand pressing into his back. Panic surged as he felt the hand twitch, then grip him with a vice-like strength. The spectral figure of his wife swooped down, pressing his face into the pillow with an overwhelming force. He struggled to scream, but the pressure on his throat silenced him. Darkness engulfed him as his breath was snuffed out. The next morning, the housemaid entered with Percival's morning tea. She found him sprawled lifeless on the floor, his face a mask of terror. The golden hand clutched his throat, its fingers curled tightly, as if still driven by the vengeful spirit of the widow. And so, the tale of the widow's golden hand became another whispered legend in the city, a chilling reminder of greed's peril and the unquiet dead who seek their due. In the heart of the venerable Haven Hall, a place where shadows whispered secrets and the past lingered in every corner, Kate found herself staring at the daunting pile of textbooks on her desk. With finals looming, she knew an all-nighter was inevitable. Her roommate Julie preferred to sleep early, so Kate gathered her study materials and retreated to the basement study room, a secluded spot where the old stone walls seemed to breathe with a life of their own. The hours passed in a blur of ink and paper. The ancient clock on the wall ticked relentlessly, its hands crawling towards midnight and beyond. At 2 o'clock, Kate realized she had left her crucial history textbook upstairs. With a weary sigh, she pushed away from the table, the chair scraping against the cold floor. She began her ascent to the 3rd floor, each step echoing in the silent hallways. The corridor was dimly lit, the flickering bulbs casting long, wavering shadows that danced with an eerie grace. The wooden floorboards creaked under her weight, adding to the unsettling atmosphere. Reaching her door, she turned the handle as softly as she could, slipping inside to avoid disturbing Julie. A strange, metallic scent hit her nostrils immediately, making her skin prickle with unease. The air felt thick with malice, as if the room itself was alive with a malevolent presence. Kate dismissed it as the toll of exhaustion playing tricks on her mind. She could hear Julie's heavy breathing from the other side of the room, a ragged sound that suggested a struggle. Groping her way along the wall, Kate reached her bed and fumbled through the covers until her fingers closed around the textbook. All the while, a steady drip, drip, drip echoed in the silence like a leaky faucet. She sighed inwardly, making a mental note to report the faulty plumbing once again. Clutching the book, she slipped out of the room as quietly as she had entered, eager to escape the oppressive atmosphere. Back in the basement, she sank into an overstuffed chair and resumed her studies, the hours slipping by unnoticed. As dawn broke, casting a soft glow through the basement windows, Kate decided to catch a couple of hours of sleep before her exam. She trudged back to her room, the early morning light casting long shadows in the hallway. Opening the door slowly, she hoped not to wake Julie. The metallic smell was stronger now, almost tangible. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light, and what she saw made her blood run cold. Julie lay sprawled on her bed, her throat slit from ear to ear, the sheets soaked in blood. 2 drops fell from the saturated blanket, landing with a sickening drip on the floor. Kate's scream tore through the silence, uncontrollable and primal. She couldn't stop wringing her hands, her mind unable to process the horror before her. Doors flew open along the hallway, and footsteps thundered toward her room. Within moments, other students gathered at the doorway, their faces pale with shock. One of her friends, eyes wide with terror, gripped Kate's arm and pointed a trembling finger at the wall above Julie's bed. There, scrawled in Julie's blood, were the chilling words, "Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the light?" "70 years ago, in the small, forgotten town of Ravenswood, nestled deep in the heart of Texas, a girl named Lila hurried through her schoolwork. Tonight was the night of the grand autumn dance, and she had spent months dreaming of this moment. She had saved every penny to buy a new, sparkly crimson dress that shimmered like stardust. She knew she would be the belle of the ball, and nothing could dampen her excitement. Her mother, however, had other plans. She entered Lila's room, her face pale and determined, eyes reflecting a deep-seated fear.
"You are not going to that dance,"
her mother declared, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and fear.
"But why?"
Lila asked, her heart sinking.
"I've just spoken to the preacher. He says the dance is a gathering for the devil. You are absolutely forbidden to go,"
her mother insisted. Lila nodded, appearing to accept her mother's decree. But inside, she was resolute. As soon as her mother was preoccupied, she slipped into her new dress, its fabric whispering promises of enchantment, and slipped out into the night. The dance was held in the old, weathered manor at the edge of town. As Lila entered, every eye turned to her, and conversations ceased. She had always been the invisible girl, the wallflower, but tonight she was a radiant star. The boys in her class, who had never given her a second glance, now clamored for her attention, desperate to be the one to hold her in their arms. After hours of dancing, Lila needed a break. She made her way to the refreshment table, her heart fluttering with joy. Suddenly, the room fell silent. The music stopped. Lila turned and saw a man standing beside her. He was striking, with jet-black hair and clothes as dark as midnight, his eyes smoldering with an unnatural intensity.
"Dance with me,"
he said, his voice smooth as silk. Lila could only manage a stammered.
"Yes."
Captivated by his presence, he led her back to the dance floor, and the music resumed, more haunting and beautiful than before. They moved together in perfect harmony, Lila's feet barely touching the ground. They became the center of attention, the other dancers fading into the background. As the night wore on, the man's grip on her tightened, and his smile grew more sinister. He spun her around and around, faster and faster. Lila tried to catch her breath, to break free from the dizzying whirl, but he held her firm. Her feet began to burn, and the floor seemed to liquefy beneath her. Faster and faster they spun, a whirlwind of crimson and black. A cloud of dust rose around them, obscuring them from the stunned onlookers. The air grew thick and heavy, and Lila's vision blurred as the world twisted and warped around her. When the dust finally settled, Lila was gone. The man in black bowed once to the astonished crowd and vanished into the shadows. The room was filled with a chilling silence, the echoes of the haunting music lingering like a ghostly wail. The devil had come to his dance, and he had claimed his prize, spinning Lila all the way to hell.